Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the San Jose Sharks as Doug Wilson is leaving the San Jose Sharks organization after almost 2 decades. Doug Wilson has been the general manager of this team. He has turned the Sharks into a really good franchise. So let's look at the legacy that Doug Wilson left on this team, the success this team had, the players that he brought in, whether it was draft day steals, trade blockbusters that he deals that he made. We're going to look at all of that today. So this is the news. So breaking news from Puck Report NHL. The San Jose Sharks GM Doug Wilson is stepping down after 19 seasons with the club. He had been on medical leave since November, and we'll get to that in a second. And this is in quote from Doug Wilson. I feel it is in the best interest of the organization and myself to step down from my duties and focus on my health and full recovery. I look forward to continuing my career in the future. He will officially depart at the end of this season, the team says. Joe Will keeps his role for now as interim general manager, and the search for a permanent replacement will be a quote-unquote an extensive external search. So that's what we're looking at for the Sharks, as Doug Wilson has now left the organization. This has been a really good team under Doug Wilson, and we're going to go over the really what has been the last 2 decades of the San Jose Sharks. So looking at their history, so we're going all the way back in time here. Let's take a look. I mean, you look at the unheralded success that this organization had in general. It really is kind of just, it's amazing. And you look at the guys that he brought in, when he brought them in, and this is kind of where we are today with this Sharks team. So, Sharks season by season, let's get to that. I should have had this up for you guys already, but alright, let's get to it. So, list of Sharks seasons. So, we're going to go year by year breakdown. So, Doug Wilson's first season with the San Jose Sharks was his first day was May 13th of 2003. So to give context for where the Sharks had been at this point, they had been a pretty good franchise overall. The first 2 years of their expansion, they didn't make the playoffs. They went to the second round the next 2 seasons. They lost, they did not make the playoffs the next 2 years. They went to the first round the next 2 years. And then you start to see a little bit of success here and there, but really they didn't get to the conference finals. This was a team that wasn't consistently getting very far in the playoffs. So at the end of the 2002-2003 season, after 5 straight seasons of making the postseason, they did not qualify for the playoffs. They bring in a new guy, and that guy happens to be Doug Wilson. So Doug Wilson comes into San Jose, and his first season, they win their division. They win the Pacific Division in 2004. A 43-win season, not to mention. And for the first time in team history, in his first season, they go all the way to the conference finals where they lose in 6 games to the Flames. But in those first 2 rounds, they played good teams in the Pacific, who were the St. Louis Blues and the Colorado Avalanche. 2 highly coveted teams, especially the Avalanche, with where they had been in recent years, right? Remember, they had won a couple cups in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was a big stepping stone for the Sharks. The next season, the 2005 playoffs, they go to the second round. The 2006 playoffs, again, they lose to the Red Wings, but they get to the second round. Again, 2007-08 season, they go to the second round again. This is a team that consistently made the playoffs. In 2011, they had their crazy game against the Vancouver Canucks in the conference finals. It went off. I think they lost track of, everybody in the stadium lost track of where the puck went. And then, of all freaking people, Kevin Bieksa, just whacks it into the net. He is the only guy on that ice, the only guy in that arena that knew where that puck was. And they're like, oh, it's in the net. He scored. right? And everybody remembers that kind of moment. Maybe not favorably for the Sharks fans out there, but that was a good run for them in 2011. And again, they won the Pacific Division once again. They had another, and this was their most successful season, was the 2015-16 season. They were third in the they were third in the Pacific Division. They had 46 wins that season, which was really impressive. Really solid run there. They had 98 points. But they went to the Stanley Cup Final where they met up with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that is the furthest they have gone in the history of the team, and that was in 2016. And since then, they've kind of had their ups and downs. They've lost to the Oilers in the playoffs, the Golden Knights. They would end up coming back to beat the Golden Knights in the first round of the 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs. Remember, Vegas was the team to beat, right? They were good. They end up being third in the division, right? So it was second versus third team. They end up beating the Golden Knights. They were down 3-1 in that series. They were down in that game, and they came all the way back, right? Remember, Hurdle scoring a couple goals, Logan Couture, Timo Meier. I mean, it was just a crazy game. That is a game 7 that will go down in NHL history. I think they were down 3 goals, right? And they come all the way back and win it in overtime. That was just incredible. But they ended up losing again. They did make it to the conference finals, though, where they eventually lost to the then Stanley Cup champions, the St. Louis Blues, in 2019. And then since then, now this is going to be their third straight season of missing the Stanley Cup playoffs, just kind of out of nowhere. They just completely dropped off. They had, pretty much, 4 seasons of 98 plus points, and now they had 63 points, shortened season last year, and 49 points last year, and God knows where they're going to finish this year, probably somewhere between 70 and 80 points. So the San Jose Sharks, again, I mean, you look at just how they just fell off the map. Second, third, second, third, second, first, second, first in the division all those years, and then all of a sudden the last 2 years, 7th, 8th in their division. Just crazy how things have kind of fallen off, right? But the more positive side here for Wilson. So he's been here with the Sharks 19 seasons, the most successful run in franchise history, like we mentioned. Now, they are third in the NHL. Since Doug Wilson came in 2003, they have the third most regular season wins in the entire National Hockey League. 768 wins for the Penguins, 762 wins for the Bruins, and 760 regular season wins for the San Jose Sharks. That is impressive. That is consistency to a T. They are also tied. They were, also had third most in terms of standing points during that stretch in the regular season. Again, only behind the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Boston Bruins throughout that time. Of those 19 seasons in San Jose, Doug Wilson put together 14 successful seasons, I guess you could say, in terms of making the Stanley Cup playoffs. 14 playoff seasons. I think they went to the conference finals 3 or 4 times in that stretch. They also went to the Stanley Cup final once in that stretch in 2015-16. And now we get to the most interesting part of today's video, and that is the blockbuster trades and the just crazy, very good, I'm trying to think of the right word to say for it, the moves that he made in terms of trades and at the draft table. So some of the blockbuster trades that we saw Doug Wilson make, the first one being acquiring Joe Thornton from the Boston Bruins, right? That was a massive trade. Joe Thornton coming over to San Jose. Dan Boyle in 2008 was a huge addition to the San Jose Sharks. He came in 2008. Danny Heatley coming over in 2009. Another huge addition to that team during that playoff run. Brent Burns, obviously from the Minnesota Wild trade in 2011, the Charlie Coyle Brent Burns trade. And then the most recent one in 2018, making that big summer blockbuster move with the Ottawa Senators, bringing in their former captain Erik Karlsson, who they inevitably re-signed to a massive contract. Now, this is where things also get kind of crazy here, looking at the draft. So what are some of the draft steals that we saw from Doug Wilson in his tenure? Well, the first one being Joe Pavelski. He was a leader of the San Jose Sharks. They drafted him in 2003. Devin Setoguchi and Mark-Edward Vlasic, both were 2005 draft picks. Logan Couture, Nick Bonino, and Justin Braun, who all three of those guys figured into their 2016 Stanley Cup playoff success 6 years later, they were all drafted in the 2007 NHL draft. Charlie Coyle was drafted in 2010. He never put on the teal and black for the Sharks. He ended up getting traded to the Minnesota Wild, again a year later in that deal for Brent Burns. Tomas Hertl was their draft pick in 2012. Really good pickup there. Timo Meier in 2015. And the most recent guy being Mario Ferraro in 2017. Kind of a middling draft pick nobody really talked about. But Mario Ferraro is a really good defenseman, and at this point, one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman on the Sharks this season. So that's kind of where the Sharks are at. I mean, you look at some of those names: Thornton, Boyle, Heatley, Burns, Carlson, Pavelski, Setoguchi, Vlasic, Couture, Bonino, Braun, Coyle, Hertl, Meier, and Ferraro. I didn't even get into the some of the moves they made in free agency, some of the good timely moves he made there. I mean, he even made a push for, when he was, after he got Erik Karlsson, he was looking at John Tavares. He was one of the very few teams. It was the New York Islanders, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the San Jose Sharks. Those were the final three teams to talk with John before he ended up going to Toronto. I know that whole situation in 2018, that's something that we will never forget, but that's how things were for the Sharks. Doug Wilson was always in on the top guys, and if he wasn't in on the top guys, he was drafting them late in the draft, and just that is how you build an organization that continually makes the playoffs. That doesn't happen overnight. You look at some of those guys, you look at Charlie Coyle, who was drafted in 2010. I mean, look where he is today in 2022 in Boston. He's been a good player. Bonino's bounced around. Braun being bounced around. He was an acquisition for the Rangers at the deadline. I mean, these are guys that are good hockey players, and a lot of that is on Doug Wilson. And who knows, some of the guys he's drafted here in 2019, 2020, a guy like William Eklund, how are those guys going to turn out in the next couple years because of Doug Wilson drafting those players? So guys, let me know, who do you think should be the next general manager of the San Jose Sharks, and who's the best replacement to this success? Because the Sharks, like I said, have had an unheralded successful run in San Jose. Who's going to be the guy to keep that train and momentum going? Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.